Cozzy, are you all right, mate? You going to make it through?
That's such a wide-ranging question that I almost am I
Bunged up wise.
Oh yeah, no. This Charlie. This episode will be my my Michael Jordan flu game. I imagine, which I assume everybody in 2020 watched the Last Dance because there was nothing else to do. And
They
Jordan
brought it forward, didn't they? Bring it forward because of COVID. It's just so this is binge worthy, and you need this, guys.
In which case, that is very, very smart planning because it was that and the Tiger King documentary, wasn't it, which dominated the discourse when we were all sat at home and had nothing to do. But yeah, the Jordan flu game, very famously food poisoned and then got out of bed like just a little over an hour before a key game against somebody in the playoffs and, dropped nearly 40 points and he was fine. So what have I got to complain about,
It's big chat. There's big chat around your performance here, mate. Good luck.
Thanks. Good luck suggesting that you don't back me to succeed. Charlie, I've got a mute button for a reason and editing powers. So if a big, terrible sneeze happens, no, thank you. I will battle through. Welcome back to the Rugby Bunker, everybody. We're doing this a little bit early this week because of some travel plans for myself. So the next time we do an episode or there's an episode on the channel, the backdrop might look slightly different. But yeah, Charlie, there's a few little fun bits to dissect from the Champions Cup weekend. I mean, I know it's not necessarily a popular opinion. I kind of enjoyed some of the Champions Cup games over the weekend for entertainment value. There was a lot to sink your teeth into, wasn't there?
Well, this is the problem, right? Like the individual games, some of the time are fantastic. So La Rochelle Leinster, apart from the first quarter of that was a bit iffy, wasn't it? Leinster had a sort of attacking burst and looked kind of slicker than they have done of late. And then La Rochelle dragged them into a dogfight, but then La Rochelle's offloading game imposed itself, and that was a fantastic game. Toulouse Saracens was a real slugfest in pretty grim conditions. Bordeaux-Saints was more an exhibition of the rugby that Bordeaux are playing at the minute, which is slightly unconventional, but so clinical. I was looking through for a piece. Hopefully it's going live tomorrow. Hopefully this makes sense. So they scored 8 tries. And if you add up the rucks that sort of led to those tries, so in 8 different attacking sequences, how many rucks do you think took them to score 8 tries?
Oh man, I would hope more than it's going to be. Tell me how many.
11. So
What?
yeah, so I think it's 5 of those happen without a ruck. So turnover ball directly from a scrum, directly from recovered kicks and kick returns. 1 try took 7 rucks, and then there were 2 others that took 2. But that just shows they are just so clinical in possession and are playing. It's just so distinctive. I don't know. It's not unconventional, but they're so in tune with the. Noel McNamara is just a really interesting guy who's really open-minded coach there, who hasn't come from a traditional rugby background, but is really using the tools he has at his disposal to punish these broken field situations. It's so interesting. So yeah, you had a few of the game. I maybe missing. It's great to see. Glasgow Warriors is a great story. They look like they're going to be up there with UBB at the top of this if they get one over on Saracens, and for Saracens to back up is going to be very difficult. The individual games aren't the problem when sides are at full strength, as you'd hope. But when there's no jeopardy and when the format just seems flabby and confusing, it's really quite sad because, I think certainly from the point of view of English clubs, you want variety and you want validation as well. You want to go up against a side from a different league with unfamiliar players, and you want to win because there are bragging rights there, but also validation of what you're watching every week in the Prem. And yeah, it's just that every time it rolls around, it just feels a bit sad that there's this level of apathy towards it, because that's a real tangible thing. I think I was at the Stoop to watch, and actually, I think if we rewind, I predicted the Stormers win. Then when we got to,
I didn't want to bring it up, but sure, yeah, you did.
But that was before I want to say that was before the teams came out.
So did I. So I don't know why I'm pinning it on you. I mean, we were both in the same boat.
Yeah, but even so, that they brought 5 Springboks. I think it was. They had Ollie Kebble, who's got caps for Scotland at Loosehead. And they didn't want to make excuses afterwards about the selection, about the travel, but their unbeaten record just went up in smoke, and they were ripped apart by a Harlequins team that has been badly struggling. And Harlequins clearly had improved, but it was so interesting being among Harlequins supporters, because at the beginning it was, speaking to a few of them, and they were sort of going, I don't know what's going to happen here. This could be pretty competitive. Are we going to find out about these unfamiliar Stormers players, and are they going to absolutely tear into us and rip us apart? And is it going to be sort of misery compounded from the Prem? Then it was sort of a relief that Harlequins sort of had their act together and looked kind of competent and clear about how they're playing. But then it sort of turned again, and it was into indifference, and it was, what's the point? And that is just the apathy. Apathy is just the most dangerous. Even to encroach on apathy is just the most dangerous thing for any sort of competition, isn't it? And that is honestly some of what I sensed at the game.
And you could forgive Harlequins supporters for being actively annoyed that they hadn't seen more of that from the team in games that actually matter. I just think about that Stormers selection. I wonder if they would have been better, and obviously I'm not John Dobson, but would they actually have been better gambling on Leicester sending a weakened side to Cape Town next week, and instead sending your gun Stormers team to the Stoop, hoping to get a win or banking on a win, and then knowing that then you could potentially rest players the following week at home against potentially a weakened Leicester side? We've got no idea what Leicester are going to send. I wonder if it would be risky, because then if you send your kind of like first choice team to London and then you lose, then they're knackered for the following week. Knackered. Like, they're more tired for the following week travelling back home. But then they might have wrapped up a home playoff a week earlier, and then and then probably they could have potentially beaten Leicester next week anyway. I just wonder whether, don't know. It just occurred to me while you were talking about their selection.
No, I thought that's exactly what they do. And part of John Dobson's defence was, look, this rotated side has done very well in the URC, where they're top and they've won 8 from 8. So they've won, a lot of these players won in Munster. And so therefore we kind of felt like we had enough. But he called it humiliating. So stood next to Damien Valenza and called it humiliating. And I just think to go back to the format, almost came having won 2. So they had that buffer anyway, but it just shows how little jeopardy there can be on some games that they could have they got away with totally folding. Like some of it was really quite bizarrely bad. It's got to be for a professional side to ship 60. It has, even though Harlequins have dangerous players, they just haven't looked anywhere near doing that. And Jason Gilmore, Harlequins coach, afterwards was saying, we've changed things up in the week and we've put more emphasis on our attack and our, by happy coincidence, almost our defence was a lot better. And it was. All of these things are true, but there was such an empty feeling, justifiably empty feeling afterwards. And I just kind of am getting deja vu, because I was at the Stormers game last year, and you had finished up with John Dobson, who's super articulate, has got so much time for journalists, is doing a great job this season, certainly. But I kind of had deja vu about him apologising and defending the place of South African franchises in the tournament, and that just shouldn't be happening by now. We should at least have a format where that sort of thing is more severely punished. And I'm not just talking about the selection, I'm talking about the performance really. But yeah, I've written about it. I've written about the sort of, and I fear that piece doesn't have many solutions. And that's, you don't want to be moaning without a solution. But what seems to be the sort of mood music is, I think it's 2029 or 2030 that the heads of agreement of this competition are signed until. So we have this format seemingly for a little while to come. But the mood music seems to be that eventually it will be moved to the end of the season, the domestic season, so that the top 14, the Premiership and the URC can be out of the way, and then the continental competition can be played on the basis of how that season has just finished has finished. And the qualification sort of sorted accordingly, which I don't know if it feels pretty good to me. But then you've got the issue of, if our club's not going to get enough revenue from the games, or that if there aren't enough games, then they're not going to bring that cash in. It's all quite sad, really. And notwithstanding all of this, we're still getting great games, and we are going to get a great knockout stage, certainly from the quarterfinals on. But I just worry that there's so much interest lost and engagement lost before we get to that point.
Well, we're getting great games, but on a broadcaster, certainly in England, which just doesn't have enough of a foothold, I don't think, compared to what people are used to with TNT. I know that Premier Sports show the URC in top 14, and if you're following that, then it's great. But I feel as though, I think it was maybe there were some comments under one of the Northampton reports or news pieces about Sunday saying, yeah, like, sounds like a great game, but obviously I haven't forked out X per month to just watch this game. And listen, that's the situation that we've had for the past 2 seasons. And I think that if it plays out as expected in terms of TNT's future broadcast deals, there's potentially a way for it to go back there and to go back to that audience. But you're right, it's a combination of, I feel like, unfortunately, that sense of apathy set in a long time ago, and trying to get back from that is very, very difficult. Also, Charlie, moaning without any solutions. We've been doing that for years. I was chatting with a TV pundit about something on Sunday about yellow cards for props at scrums, and they said, look, I don't actually have a solution, but I don't necessarily agree with the premise of it. And I was like, yeah, okay, like I can kind of go with you. You know, sometimes you just have to ask the question, and then the answer will magically appear.
Someone a better formatsman or woman will help me out, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can find that person and get them on for a future episode, and just. I mean, the problem here is I wrote about this about 3 weeks ago, and it's already gone straight out of my head. But it's the number of. It's not the number of teams necessarily. It's the format, isn't it? And it's the number of weeks that the tournaments are actually being played in. That's the issue. You can go back to the old style of 24 teams playing in pools and having home and away. 6 pool winners and the 2 best runners up, which I loved. I loved that because you genuinely, on the final weekend, were getting the abacus out, weren't you, to sort of work out who had the best points difference or had scored the most tries, or who was likely to get those runners-up spots, not necessarily just the pool winners spots. Saracens-Toulouse on Sunday, I was sent a picture by a friend who went and was questionably sat in the front row of the exposed stand, and it looked absolutely filthy weather. He said that Antoine Dupont came out for the start of the second half and was noticeably shivering before the kickoff, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I think we both said that Toulouse would win that just because the Glasgow result for them was such a disaster, and they didn't. And now you're like, okay, that's an interesting development.
Yeah, very. Jamie George, I thought, was massive. I think actually quietly he had quite a good November for England. He looked fired up by potentially needing to really reinforce his worth to that side after losing the captaincy. He was really busy in the autumn for England with really big tackle counts, even when he was coming off, sort of after when he was starting and coming off early into the second half. And he lasted 80 against Toulouse and was excellent. Line out was a little bit dodgy, but as you say, the conditions were brutal. The Willis on Willis stuff was magical.
Lovely scrap. Really enjoyed the little tussle. That was good.
Well, the first scrum where Jack shoots off the base to meet Tom, who has had it, who often gets it his own way at the back of those scrums in the Prem, and was sort of met by, one of the best defenders in the world, was cool to watch. But just how they kept going and going and going. And I think whether it's a lesson for Steve Borthwick, I'm not sure, but I was finding it quite interesting that he wasn't getting 80 minutes for England. And Tom Willis, this is before he confirmed his move to Bordeaux. And I think he came off at 70 against Toulouse, but he just grows into games, and it is sort of that pounding the rock sort of thing where he'll just keep going. And it's like prime Billy Vunipola, really. If the 7th and 8th and 9th carry don't get you and doesn't sort of pierce the gain line, then the next 3 will, and the next 3 might get penalties for defenders not being able to roll, or they might, get a quick ruck. And it's really interesting that, how influential he is being for Saracens is sort of crystallized in what England had to do in the autumn. They had to basically go, well, okay, we can't pick you because we're going to have to revamp how we're going to have to go about things tactically up until the World Cup. And I think it's just he's looking like the form number 8 in Europe. I do think that Saracens Glasgow game is just so interesting. It really will hold a mirror up, because I thought Toulouse would win as well. I thought Toulouse could win quite handsomely. just given where Saracens had looked in the Prem. They'd looked flat. They'd looked a little bit oddly tentative even. And Mark McCall sort of made those points himself. So it was a really impressive reaction. But this trip to Scotstoun will be, that's going to be so interesting. I'm just really, really interested in how that goes. Now you've got those little subplots heading into the Six Nations, and with England having to go up to Murrayfield, I think that's quite a cool little marker.
Yeah, massively. They've not won there since 2020, have they? I was looking at the record book the other day. It's been a while since England won up there. I'm just thinking about the other games. Gloucester nearly got something at Edinburgh. They were in quite a good position and then faded, which is just more. I wonder if their supporters, having been completely disillusioned after Newcastle, will at least take some solace that there were some bright moments there.
So Charlie Atkinson, good. Unsure how that'll play out given that they've brought in Ross Byrne as a sort of guy to lead them. But people that have watched them more than I have this season, Gloucester that is, have been so impressed by Charlie Atkinson to the point where they've sort of very keen for him to be number 1, number 10, and for whatever they get out of the rest of the season to come around him. So that's another subplot, isn't it, for this game coming up against Toulon, whether Charlie Atkinson keeps the reins or whether they go back to Ross Byrne.
Yeah, I mean, file that under storylines that I did not expect to read this season. The idea of Gloucester moving away from Ross Byrne because they felt they could get more out of another fly half, and I think we touched on it last week, or I touched on it on the Substack last week. It's been a disappointing development. That how have we got this far without talking about Bulls-Bristol? What an absolutely bananas affair. I texted someone at Bristol at half time to see if they were there, and they just said it's absolutely bonkers. Like, it's 35 degrees and we're playing sevens. And I know the Bulls are in a pretty horrible rut under Johan Ackermann, and that they've been firing assistant coaches and getting an outside help, but it was still a pretty gun Bulls team. And they just, the way Bristol ripped them open, not bothered by the attitude. I love Noah Hayward, who scored a hat-trick, giving it the proper slipcord and sun cream across his nose and cheeks, looking like he was settling in for a long kind of middle session after lunch with the sun beating down on him. He was fully prepared, and absolute kind of jet heels, rapid, brilliant diving finish for his second, lovely celebration for his third. We were chatting about that on Sunday night, weren't we? How it's sort of the kind of, I love a spike celebration in either rugby or American football where the ball then comes back up and just smacks a player in the face. That will always tickle me. But unreal.
It's a gauntlet you're running with that celebration, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hard to look really cool, just look kind of angry. But that was good. That was one of the ones where it's James Williams, wasn't it, with the intercept and then the kick. And that's one of the ones where you're going, is that the right decision? And it was beautifully weighted, the kick. So no, that was just a mad game. For Bristol to be so free scoring and yet not be out of the woods, and then without a really important intervention on the very last play from Pedro Rubiolo, Bulls would have got 2 points out of it. Would have got within 7, which is nuts, really. But they've got what they wanted out of that, and they're going to be one of the top seeds if they can knock off Bordeaux. That game's going to be amazing as well this weekend. I would really it's easy to have a soft spot for Bristol because of how they play and actually how they market themselves as well. There's a lot of good people in that organisation, but for them to win silverware when the whole narrative has been, it's kind of attractive stuff, but doesn't win you trophies. And trophies, for them to win one of the big trophies that they're in while staying true to that, I think would be a really nice kind of story for the sport as a whole, because they've really done it their way.
Yeah, no, you're right. I know Stuart Barnes wrote about this in the Times, and I touched on it in on the Substack, on the Off-Field Review this week as well. I think Bristol are a bit weird at the moment because, admittedly, talking about their defence after they've just shipped 49, it is an odd thing to do. But if you look at this run of wins now, going back to the end of November, I think it's seven wins in a row. And if you discount the Prem Rugby Cup, I always do, then they actually haven't lost for for ages now. But in that run, the points they're conceding are like 12, 16, 17. I think it was something like 27 against Newcastle, which actually speaks to what Newcastle have, how well they've been doing. I spoke loads in pre-season about taking the defence back to basics, not ripping up the system, but just really emphasising commitment to the defence and saying how they weren't proud of it last season. Because last season it was ridiculous. Like they were scoring loads of tries, but they were also shipping like 32 points a game or whatever. And I can't remember how many tries on average, but a lot. So you are seeing a bit of development defensively meshed with keeping that attacking approach together. The more defence success rate, I was chatting with a source, their more defence success rate is way up this season, and Rubiolo has just been awesome in terms of adding that physicality to their defence. I think they just lacked that last season. They couldn't live with the more powerful teams.
Profile-wise, Pedro Rubiolo looks like a tall, tight-head prop. If you watch him live, I remember him. It was a Quins game at the back end of last season where he'd completed an early move, and this is going to speak to my professionalism. But I was watching the game, and I don't think I'd hadn't checked the team sheets. Didn't realize he was playing. I think I realized he was playing, but was so shocked at his sort of physical profile. He does look like a cross between a prop and a lock, and I think he's 6'5" or whatever. So he's definitely a lock, but he's just such a solid specimen. And yeah, he just throws himself about. Unbelievable engine. Just, that's a great pickup for them. They do a lot of smart recruitment.
It's like Van der Mescht at Saints, right? Like if you looked at a profile of him chest up, you would assume he probably was a prop, and then actually you see the rest of him and think, oh no, you're just a very large man. Yeah. So, but you're right about Bristol in terms of, can you convert it into success? Because it's 3 semi-final appearances in 7 years. They won that Challenge Cup in 2020, but they've made it past the quarters in the Champions Cup, I want to say. So it's fun and it's great, and it's impressive that they did that at Loftus without Lewis Rees-Zammit as well, who was in the concussion protocol. But I mean, yeah, you want them to, go to the next level, make a final for starters, and see what they can do. I think the less said about the Sharks derby, the better. I think I saw someone say that it was one of the worst games they'd ever seen, or one of the worst halves they'd ever seen, like the first half, almost as if the off-field juicy stuff in the build-up, which I did enjoy,
got what it deserved.
Marco Massotti, the Sharks backer, calling Sale tuna. Hey, fair play. He was there at the game. Looked like he had a nice little powwow with Michelle Orange afterwards, the Sale backer. Look, maybe the off-field stuff was better than the on-field stuff. The South African Sharks, as anyone who's followed them this season will know, that they're just a disaster this season. So it's not a surprise. But yeah. No, Charlie, it was a decent weekend. Toulon Munster was very good. And that leads us into chatting about Bordeaux-Saints, which I know you touched on Noel McNamara earlier. The Pollock stuff was quite funny. I absolutely adored the 2 supporters who were captured after his first try. In the stands, just wearing like kind of Henry Pollock wigs, essentially, blonde hair and a big headband. And I was like, wow, okay, we are starting to scratch the surface of a cult fandom here with Henry Pollock, which I know is going to rile a lot of people up. And I kind of get it, but it's also a lot of fun, isn't it?
So much fun. And he is always, keep the main thing is what, the truism that Razzie Erasmus and smart coaches live by, and Henry Pollock really does that. His performance. I thought it was interesting that, and I've written about this on Monday, how Saints tried to, when they start Pollock, they are very mindful of how they've got to have heft elsewhere. You mentioned Van der Mescht up there, the back 5 with Van der Mescht, or with Alex Coles first of all, but then Van der Mescht, Callum Chick, Tom Pearson. Tom Pearson's a big lad to have open side. And then, so you've got, it's almost like how Rob Baxter used to do it with Sam Simmons, having sort of a lock at 6 and sometimes a lock at 7 as well. And what kind of interests me is that England don't necessarily have the tools to do that. I wouldn't have thought, unless George Martin is fit. So that's an interesting sort of wrinkle for how Henry Pollock's kind of career develops towards test starts. I think he's probably going to have to displace one of the sort of more established, clearly we're going to have to displace one of the more established kind of out and out flankers to get in the starting side. But he's very valuable getting half an hour as part of a bench at the minute. So, and he carried a lot It's where he was probably, he scored 2 tries from out wide. The skills for skills for both of them are excellent. Diving on the second one. The first one is outstanding, but also that chip and chase, we've seen it so many times before. You know, he scored against Sale using it. I don't think he scored, but he sort of lit up a game for the Lions with one, didn't he? And kicking from forwards used to be a sort of punchline. But now we've had a year of Henry Pollock and Adi Severa almost trading highlight reel moments. And before that, we had Justin Tipuric. And I just think that's kind of maybe a sign of how the game's progressing, is that those skills are going to have to be appreciated across the board. And maybe also it just shows that those hybrid forwards who are comfortable out wide are going to continue to be more valuable, not just because you can balance 6-2 and 7-1 benches, but also because you can change things up. You know, you can be a bit creative in set plays. You can be a bit more fluid in phase play, phase attack as well. It's all very interesting stuff. And, you know, but I do think it's really important to say that the sideshow with Henry Pollock is fun, but the main thing is still the main thing. His consistency, and there were mistakes in this game. You know, he spilled after his chip and chase, he spilled the ball, and that kind of brought about a really kind of crucial period of scrummaging pressure from Bordeaux, actually, and Saints lost Daniel Fischetti to a yellow card. But the main thing is always the main thing with Henry Pollock, and I think that's really important, and I don't see that changing, to be honest.
I do enjoy watching Bordeaux-Bègles just in top gear, kind of pairing away, and Cam Rocky being awesome. As I tweeted out on Sunday, absolutely has the best rugby Wikipedia image on his profile, which is him in like full garb from a Renault advert from a few years back, which I thoroughly enjoyed. No, it was great. I love Bordeaux. That Bordeaux trip to Bristol, I wonder how they approach it. I hope they go all guns blazing. I hope we get a classic. Charlie, we said we keep it tight, so I reckon that's us. But there'll be a little preview chat later in the week, whether it's just me and Charlie or me or somebody else. But yeah, we did it. I'm still alive. We made it through half an hour.
I feel like you've come on strong.
I'm just going to fall off this chair now and reevaluate everything. But yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time as ever. Give us a share. Give us a subscribe. Can't even get the words out. Give us a subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you very soon.